guys, it's hashtag Love Right Create, and tonight I have three guests, not just two, but three, and you're gonna love all of them. So first we have Gaby Robbins,
Hey y'all.
and we also have Laura Byrne-Cristiano,
Hello, everybody.
and we also have Morgan Wylie.
Whoop, whoop.
Now, I want everyone to understand that now we are crossing the continent. I mean, literally now with this hangout because we have East Coast, Central, and West Coast represented here. And I'm kind of excited about that, even though some of you are probably thinking I'm really tired or it's really early. We're going to be talking about the perfect book convention for you. And for those of you that have watched in the past, especially this last episode that we did, we talked about book conventions, but it was pre-book conventions, and now we are post-book conventions. And I wanted to start out the hangout by asking each of you what was the one highlight of this. I was calling it a book convention season, but I don't think it's over yet. But of the conventions you've gone to, what was the one highlight from your experience? And why don't I go ahead and we'll start with you, Gaby. Is that cool?
Yeah, absolutely. I've obviously don't have as many book conventions under my belt as some of the ladies on the panel, but I did go to a book convention just recently, and I was pleasantly surprised by, I'm going to say two things. Number one, I met a really cool new author. Well, she's not new, but new to me. I didn't know her before. Her name was S.M. Boyce, and she was just amazing to hang out with and talk to. But what was really cool was I started reading one of her books already, and then to meet her, it was the time of interaction of just sitting around talking about what we liked, things we enjoyed, and just having good conversation, which you don't usually get to do, and that was really cool. The second was getting to see an author that I've read all of her series, and getting to hear her talk on panels about just different styles of writing or different points about writing, and that was really cool. So that was CC Hunter, and that was awesome. And so I kind of fangirled a little bit and got a book signed, even though I have all of her books already, but I needed to have something. So that was really great. I feel like for me, meeting authors and actually getting to discuss books or hear them discuss writing or books is just super interesting. Not just the book that they're promoting at the time, but books in general and likes and dislikes and things like that. I thought that was really, really great. So
cool. Okay, so Laura, what about you? What has been your highlight? Because you're one of those that you've been to a couple already.
I've been to a couple. It's hard to pick. I'm going to pick one that I think is a good West Coast one for maybe people who are joining us on the West Coast. I went to LA Times Festival of Books, which was really awesome. I had never been there before, and I think one of the best parts about it is they had some really, really cool author chat series. And it wasn't crowded. Everybody had a seat. There were some awesome moderators that just really asked the best questions ever. And I felt like you got to know the author that you maybe were there to see, but at the same time, you got interested in other authors that maybe you didn't know a thing about at all. I specifically went to go see two panels. One was to go see the one that Leigh Bardugo. I'm a big Leigh Bardugo fan, so I was going to see the panel that Leigh Bardugo was on. And then secondly, I was also going to go to see the panel that Elizabeth Eulberg was on. And while I was watching their panels, and it was fantastic hearing them talk, I also was then, I was basically given more exposure to Sarah J. Maas, whose books I had, but they were kind of sitting on the back side of the Kindle. You know how you have those, oh, I'm going to get to them eventually books on the Kindle? So it was one of those, and then after seeing her on the panel, I was like, oh, I think I better move this to the front of the Kindle. So I think one of the most awesome things, I guess to bring it back to the question, is when you get a really awesome author panel with people you don't maybe know, you hear about them talking about really whatever, and you're like, oh my God, you're so entertaining, now I want to go see your book. And I feel like that's what I got out of LA Times Festival of Books.
Awesome. Okay, Morgan, what about you?
Okay, well, like Gaby, I am not well versed in conventions. I hope to change that in the future. But so far for me, it has been Utopia Con, which is where we all just came from. And for me, well, a couple things, but similar to Gabby, it just the people. And I think also for me, I've been coming out of a bit of a writing drought because of our big move and getting the house ready. And so I think being around all of these new authors, established authors, bloggers, readers, there was a synergy in the air that was exciting and was, you know, inspiring for me. So that was a big thing that I took away. Also, just meeting meeting more of the authors that I love, and Utopia for me is more like a reunion for a lot of people that have come for the last 3 years. So, you know, getting to see them again and new authors. And this year, a few of my beta readers were there and bloggers, and so that was fun to get to actually meet them in person and squeeze them and give them hugs. So that was fun.
Well, cool. Yeah, I'm kind of on the people front with you guys as far as like seeing certain people. But I'll kind of go out of the realm of that just to kind of touch on a subject that hasn't been spoken about, and that is to learn about new books that I haven't heard of before. I would say that's a huge highlight for me, going to a book convention, whether it's that Book Expo America type of convention where you have publishers pretty much just shoving books in your face, like, hey, look what we have. And but then also, like UtopiaCon we just came from, I am meeting all of these indie authors and seeing these covers of these books and reading synopsis that I feel like, ooh, that sounds so good, and it's stuff that I normally wouldn't see on a shelf. So I feel like that for me, the exposure to the new material, the new manuscripts that are out there, and of course, you know, if you like the author, that makes it even better. Like if you get to meet them, I think, because like Laura said, when you see someone on a panel or you see someone at a booth, and you actually get to talk to them, and I think that KP Simmons says it best, like an author is a rock star, and if they represent themselves really well in person, I think it even pushes that book to the top or further up my to-be-read list. So I think for me it's that exposure to new books. I'm such a reader. I feel like when I'm writing I don't read enough. So when I go to these conventions, it kind of fills in some of those gaps of like, what should I be reading right now? So my next question, because I love that we're talking about the highlights and the good stuff, but all of us, if I can say this, there's one person I'm not sure, well, I'm just going to say it. All of us are writing. Is that okay for me to say that?
Yes, you can. It's fine.
Okay, all of us are writing.
I actually spent all of today making my writer website, so I better be, because otherwise I spent like 10 hours making a website that I shouldn't have done, but yes, so yeah.
Okay, so all of us are writing, and when we go to these book conventions, we talk about these new authors and these new books, even some of the old authors. I say old, but the more popular authors that we just can't wait to wait in line for. Which was a comment that someone made on Facebook, was, I haven't been to any book conventions, but I can't wait to go, and wait. And I thought that was so funny because that is what is associated with most book conventions. But all of us, while Laura and I've been to some like that, we've all been to UtopiaCon, which is completely different.
Oh my gosh.
Because you're meeting authors, but you get to hone your craft. You get to meet the bloggers that, or in my case, you were one of them when you started, you know, a blogger that you get to meet them and see what they're reading. So I think that there are different types of conventions, and I would really love to know what type of convention is your favorite, or that you're looking for when you go out and you see different conventions. What type of convention are you more likely to go to? So why don't you start us out, Morgan?
Well, considering I've only been to the one kind,
Wait, Morgan, think about it. You've done the Southern Festival of Books with me, so that's another one too.
Oh, yeah,
and Gabby, you've been to that, so you know what that looks like too.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Forgot about that. Sorry. I think, well, I would like to go to some kind of combination where there is some of the excitement and the big name and the waiting and the, you know, that, but then also to have the craft and the learning more about my craft and the business side of it, and you know, and maybe stuff for the fans. I don't know, I kind of see this vision of it all coming together and merging at some point, but I don't know if that exists. It might, and I just don't know. But
well, and I think that you have a lot of conventions that try to cover all of the bases, but they do it and it overlaps each other. So like you have to pick one track, and that totally stinks. In my opinion.
I would think so too.
Yeah. Okay, so Gabby, what about you?
To be honest, I kind of enjoy the Southern Festival of Books a little bit more than a con like Utopia Con, because Utopia Con, as much as it's great, I feel like the Southern Festival of Books does a really good job of curating the information from the authors. So when you go, you're getting, you know exactly what they're talking about, and their moderators and the way that they have it set up just makes it feel like you're getting more of a complete information. And I also like Southern Festival of Books because it has different types of books. So I've said this before, where I didn't have something to do the first time I went by myself, and I just wanted to go and check it out because I just love being around, you know, people talking about books, and there's just my favorite bookstore sets up there, and it's just I love the feel of it. But it was Gillian Flynn. She was talking about writing, about her writing, and I'd seen the cover for Gone Girl, but I knew it wasn't a book that I would read because I'm a big wimp and I don't read real thrillers. I don't do that. And so just hearing her talk about her life and her writing and her method and stuff, it blew my mind because I totally didn't expect it. The next year I went, of course, I went and stood in line for Rick Riordan, and the way that he presented was awesome. It wasn't just, this is what I do. I mean, it was a very clear and succinct story of how he started writing, and then he took questions from the audience, and it was really cool questions because they curated it. And I think it just takes a little bit of time to curate the information better so that like you're getting the fan experience, but you're also getting really, really good information about writing. And it can come, you know, you can be a writer from all different backgrounds, and I feel like there too you get to see books from everywhere. Although I do like the idea of getting to sit and talk to authors, which you don't get to do at something like the Southern Festival of Books. So again, it's probably one of those make-believe kind of cons where you would be able to have, and I feel like that could be curated too. Like if you had a tea time, or if you had like a dessert time where everybody came together and just hung out. That way people aren't offended by, like I know a lot of people don't want to go and sit in bars, or they don't want to go, you know, not everybody wants to go and have a meal with a bunch of strangers, but maybe you saw an author you wanted to talk to, and if there were curated times for you to be able to do that, not just author signings, I think it would be really fun so that you can have those conversations you have with your friends about, you know, a book or about a writing style or about something you read. That's kind of what I like. I like talking about books, and I like interacting with people who love books. So, yeah, I mean, that would be my dream con, basically.
Okay, what about you, Laura? I'm kind of curious where you're going to come in on this one.
I mean, having gone to a lot of them, I mean, I've done really huge things like Book Expo America, which is sort of like a book convention on crack. I mean, you sort of feel like you're at a book convention at the same time you feel like you're a contestant on Survivor. You know, it's pretty intense. I mean, you know, you have grown women body checking you over an arc.
Sorry about that.
But at the same time, as much as you got a lot of exposure to a lot of like real mainstream publishing in a lot of different genres, at the same time what you sort of lose is some of the panels become a little antiseptic. You have a moderator of a panel who is like maybe a professional moderator, and they're going to ask what I call the incredibly vanilla question. For example, like I'll just use Stephenie Meyer as an example, since she's somebody I can use as an example I think a lot of people know. If I had $1 for every time Stephenie Meyer sat on a panel somewhere and someone said, Twilight. So it came to you through a dream. Tell us about that dream. Like 5 years into that series, if I had to listen to the dang dream story one more time,
just read the book and you can see the dream.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think most twihards were just tired of hearing about the dream. We'd all heard it. I think everybody breathed a collective sigh of, oh, gee, not again, when she was on Oprah, and we're all screaming, not the dream, not the dream. So I think sometimes those really big conventions at times lose sight of the fans. It's not as personalized as it could be. It's not as intimate. I really do like the smaller convention that you do get, like what Gaby was saying, that one-on-one interaction. I think you're not going to get that at a really big, very commercial convention. The other thing I really like about UtopiaCon, since we were talking about that, is it's hard to find really good quality information a lot of the time. I mean, I felt like the panels that I attended at UtopiaCon, I absolutely felt like there were people who knew what they were talking about and they were backing it up with very specific examples. Or if they got to an area where they didn't know, they just said, well, I don't know. Does somebody else here know? In fact, at one point, Bella, I forget Bella's last name, she was on, she wasn't a member of the panel initially that I went to. And she knew some information. They said, come on up. And she ended up on the dais giving some information. There are not a lot of conventions that would let somebody do that. So I really kind of like the mix. And I still think book conventions are evolving. I think there are some real fun things that they could do that no one's explored yet. I would love to see a session on what I would call like books out loud, where you could have readings from books, and sometimes an author is a good person to read their book, and sometimes maybe they're not the best live performer. I think there's room for that. I think there's a lot of things that we could do that maybe haven't been explored yet at different conventions.
Mm-hmm. Well, and we're going to talk about some of those ideas, no matter how crazy they may seem, in a little bit, but all of you kind of touched on something that I think was interesting when it comes to getting to know the different authors and different panels that they might be on. Because panels, as we know, are a part of every convention. Even if you don't have time to go to them, they're usually happening. Because I know at Book Expo America, they have panels all over the place, but I'm too busy standing in line for a book that I really want, or to get a signature, an autograph for something. And so I don't end up at them, even though they're happening. And I think all of us have been to really good panels, and all of us have been to really bad panels. Laura mentioned earlier a good moderator. So I kind of wanted to touch on that and see what you guys want to hear from a panel. Like, what topics do you think would be interesting to listen to? You don't have to talk about who would be on them or anything, but what topics would be interesting, and what also makes a really good moderator. I think that that's so important, having been a moderator and knowing that on some panels I really struggle to moderate and make it good. Because I think a moderator is just as much important to relating to the topic as the audience. So, okay, so with this one, Laura, why don't you go first on this one?
I think there are like two different kinds of moderators too. Like if you have a panel where it's a fairly, say, famous or semi-famous person, and you have a moderator who's doing like leading the Q&A, I think the big thing in that circumstance is the moderator has to remember it's not about them, it's about the person they're interviewing. That's really, really key, and not get too wrapped up into themselves. I've seen a couple panels with George R.R. Martin, who writes Game of Thrones, and some of the moderators were just a little too into themselves, and I'm like, no, we're here for George. We really want George, okay? So that's one thing. But when we're talking a panel, maybe like that was at Utopia or at LA Times Festival of Books, I think one that the moderator definitely has to meet with their people ahead of time, and you can like meet, doing little air quotes here, meet like on Skype or email or whatever, just to kind of get to know everybody. and maybe just do sort of like a loose outline or some bullet points of like, here are some things I would like to touch on, and and thoughts, and have people say, okay, yeah, I really like this, or maybe this is done to death, or let's go down this avenue. And then I think just having like a bullet pointed like run list of where your panel is going to go, and then leaving room for Q&A. I think sometimes it's valuable to do Q&A during the panel. Sometimes you could hit a real hot button issue and you don't realize it, so I don't think you ever want to be so rigid that you'd be like, oh no, we're not taking questions until the official last 15 minutes. But I think you want to definitely allow Q&A time at the end, and yeah, I guess that's where I would go with it.
Mm-hmm. What kind of topic would you want to hear? Like, just name one, something that you think, I want to hear this at a convention being talked about.
You know what? I'll pick one that I did at Utopia and I thought was really great, and it was basically how to write a really great query, and they had CJ Redwine leading it, who I think is absolutely amazing, and I bought her book after. She has a book out on like how to write a query, and I almost never buy a self-help book. I know that's kind of ironic as we're on a book discussion right now. I tend not to be that self-help book kind of gal, or I Google it or whatever. But in any case, I think that's a really great topic, and a really great how-to is a really great topic. The other thing I think would be some really great how-tos is, I think people know I need social media. I think a better panel would be, okay, so you've got this social media. How do you use your Facebook more effectively? How can you set it up better? Or like even a how-to on what we're doing right now, like how to do a Google Hangout. There's so many different forms of social media, and people are like, okay, I got to get it, but I really, give me a workshop, set me down with my laptop, and walk me through step by step. I think that would be an awesome thing that a lot of people would like, that's maybe missing out there.
Mm-hmm. All right, Morgan, you're nodding your head. Yeah. How about?
Well, yeah, I just think it can be overwhelming for some people, especially if it's just a blanket social media topic. It's like there are so many outlets, and it can be overwhelming if you're trying to do all of them, or find the ones that work for you. But like Laura was saying, if they were a little more specific on how to use maybe these few feeds, and how it works for you, especially as a writer or as a blogger, or however it pertains to your situation, I think would be good. Mm-hmm. I also think I would like to see, and maybe this falls into the how-to, but a little more on the entrepreneurial side of a writer. You are a business. How the practicals, how to make this your business and how it runs more for you. I guess, and there were a couple more panels this year on Utopia that I actually really enjoyed. There was one on law that I thought, well, I would like to hear more things about that. Things we're missing from professionals in the industry. What else? Somebody had mentioned maybe having a little more differentiating between, and not to like break it up, but to have like a newbie track. Hey, I am about to publish, or I have just published my first. What are the steps? Make sure I'm not missing something. For newbies that just really we're trying to figure it out and don't know. Because then have some so you've published 4 books. Here's a different track for you can improve your business and what you're writing. So those are just some ones I was thinking about.
Mm-hmm. How do you feel about moderators? Like, what is your favorite type of moderator?
You, of course.
Oh, I wasn't even looking like angling for that. That's awesome.
No, you are. You are an excellent moderator. Really, I think Laura covered it pretty well. Just ones that they need to remember they are not there for themselves. They are there to highlight those on the panel. I think also. Oh, go ahead.
I was to say, the other thing I would say too is that a moderator has to be somebody who's pretty quick on his or her feet.
Yeah.
Because you want to try to pick up on what is being said by an audience member or by somebody on the panel, and you want to capitalize on that. And at the same time, sometimes you end up with an audience member or a panelist who is kind of like a chatterbox, and you may want to say, okay, wrapping it up, but you don't want to be like really rude and be like, moving on. You know, you don't want to do that. So you need to be, you know, a way to find a good balance.
Yeah.
I'm just trying. I mean, there were a lot of people, I think, at UtopiaCon that did that really, really well. Kallie, you definitely were one of them. KP did that really well. Quinn Loftus did it well. Myra McIntyre did it well. Just giving a shout out to a couple people who I saw that I thought did, you know, really did that kind of balancing back and forth with the audience, and nice sense of humor and everything too. Even like, 'cause sometimes the topics can be a little contentious, and I don't think you don't ever want to say we don't want something contentious, because I think sometimes that's how we learn and that's how issues get brought up. But I think the moderator having a sense of humor and maybe a sort of a self-deprecating air, I think kind of really helps if it's sort of a tense issue.
I think I have that. Okay, so Gaby, let's go to you, because I know that you go to panels and you watch the moderator as much as you watch the panelists. So, Gaby, what do you think about all this?
I feel like as a moderator, you pretty much have a responsibility to, number one, outline what you're going to talk on the panel and find people, if it is your job, that's going to fit that. And then once you do that and they've agreed to do it, I think you need to have email conversations about questions so that these authors can become prepared, because a lot of times they're not there usually to, you know, have a outline of specific questions, but if you give them a little bit of information ahead of time, I think it does a world of good for the discussion that you have. Having examples and making sure that they, you know, are up on the vocabulary and just making them comfortable and prepared, because then I feel like the panel goes smoothly. They don't feel caught off guard by a question and they're like, and you feel that sometimes where they don't really have a huge basis for answering the question, but I feel like it's the moderator's job, and like Laura said, to be able to pick up on what somebody says and go with it if that's the way the direction of the conversation is going. And if you let your panel know that that's a possibility, then they're ready to go with you, because they want to have the best conversation possible. And then obviously allowing for questions. The one thing I do find very interesting that I haven't seen on a lot of panels is they've got this whole like platform on social media why they aren't taking questions for panels, like to really kind of glean from people who are coming and just people who might be watching, because some of the panels get put online. Why aren't they gleaning questions and what type of panels, so that you come with the hottest topic or what a lot of people want to talk about, and getting information that way, so when you come to, it's not the same panel you've had for 2 years, or it's not a panel that's, you know, about the heroine and, you know, just the typical stuff. I feel like you would get really good either panel topics or questions for the panels that you already have. That's something that I think that should be used more than it has been used, in my opinion.
Well, with that being said, then, what would you want to hear about in a panel? Like, what are the one or two topics that you think, man, I would love to listen to a few authors talk about that?
I think along the lines with what Morgan was talking about, when it comes to just like learning for authors, I don't feel like you get a real sense of the idea of being a brand pushed to the authors. I feel like they need to just understand, you are Disney, you are Apple, you need to present yourself in the most complete way possible. When that goes to your business side, when that goes to how you write, how you're edited, and also the way that you push yourself on social media. You are branding yourself, especially for Utopia, which is the majority of indie authors. They are their brand, and I sometimes don't think that they see it that way, and just making sure that every piece of swag they put out there, every time they post on social media, their pictures are consistent, their message is consistent, and just having an idea that they are a brand, so that I mean, I like the idea of an indie author. Like, I wrote a book and I want to share my story, but at the same time, you want to do that in the best way possible. And if they have more of a mindset of, this is my business, this is who I am, and this is I'm presenting it to you, I think it would be a great panel to have people who are doing it excellently kind of give their insight on how they do it.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I just think branding is something that's, like, you talk social media, but I don't think you talk about author branding as
and what branding means, because I think sometimes people think branding means they have a logo on their site and that's the end of branding. Like, to have a real extension of, like, what is branding. I mean, part of what I do for my day job is marketing, so I live with branding all day long, and it's extending the brand and how do you get your message out there. Yeah, absolutely. I think that is definitely a big thing, taking, branding beyond your logo.
Right.
Well, yeah, and taking it outside of social media and online marketing and putting it into your one-on-one, like taking it into your events and your signings and all of that. I think that a lot of people don't realize branding is not just on paper or online, it is in person.
Absolutely. And I think that goes to the idea of putting your best self out there and making sure you're consistent. Because I'll tell you what, if somebody sees a book cover that's consistent with the cards that are on the table, with the message that they're giving, it makes you feel different about that person. And you're quicker to drop $12-10 on a book when you feel like you're getting something that they put so much time and effort into and they're handing it to you. Like, I'll go and spend ridiculous amounts at Disney because I get a complete experience. That's how people should be about their book, especially if you're doing it independently. Because this is the only, you might get seen one time, and it's that one thing that they're seeing. I just feel like it needs to be reiterated, and then you need to be given the tools to be able to do that. And just simple branding rules. You have your colors, you have your fonts, you have your different things that, because Laura does marketing and I did marketing, we know that. But the average person doesn't know that stuff is really important. I think it would be really, really helpful.
I see a future hangout topic.
There you go.
Bubbling up, because I'm sitting here thinking of all of the things that go with that in my brain I'm thinking, oh yeah, like this and that. But I won't go there because I have another question about book conventions. And it's really actually not about book conventions. It's about the extra events that are in conjunction with the main event. Have you guys noticed that with all of these conventions, and it's not just Utopia, it's BEA does this, I'm sure LA Times does this, even I'm sure that Southern Festival of Books does this, where a publisher is there or an author is there, and they plan an event. Maybe it's like cocktails with an author, or a dinner event where a publisher has all of their authors there to kind of schmooze with some bigwigs. It can be an award show. That's something that Utopia does. These events, how important are they to you, and how do they impact you as a writer? Because do they really? I mean, I'm just curious. Laura, how about you start us off on this one?
I think it's about networking. At the end of the day, when you have a peripheral event like that, particularly if you're an author and let's say you've been on the stage and you've been at your signing table, you have not gotten a chance to get out and network with colleagues. You haven't gotten a chance to get out and meet with what I'm going to call your power blogger. At the same time, it's also, I think, really beneficial for people, particularly now that we're in the area of transmedia. And there are people who have products that they want to say, hey, listen, I want to meet some authors because I want to talk to them about how I think my product can help you, and maybe at the time you can help me. It's a give and take of business and having those discussions. And I think those peripheral events are absolutely places where those kinds of connections take place. I mean, not just even in the book world, but in any world. But at the same time, I can also see where that can go very, very badly. I'm not going to name who it is, But I will say at BEA Book Expo America, I was invited to an event prior to the convention starting by a company that had a product that they were billing as being the next best thing for authors. They gave us a little, very small taste as to what it might be. Was told, okay, come down to this place at a set time and whatever. And I got there about 10 minutes early. Okay, fine. Just had to scope it out, whatever. And the people who were actually hosting the event arrived 45 minutes late with no awareness that they were 45 minutes late, and didn't even get around to pitching their product for like another 45 after that. And they were still, after like being there for an hour and a half, I still didn't know what their product was about. And I thought, well, I met some other really cool industry people. I pretty much want nothing to do with them or their product. But at the same time, it was great for me because I got to meet this lady who was a blogger, and what she particularly likes to blog about are mystery writers. And we were having a really good conversation about that because that happens to be a genre I like. So it was great. I made a connection there, even though what I was there for wasn't good. I did meet somebody else. So I would say, bottom line, those events, you kind of got to make lemons out of lemonade sometimes, or lemonade out of lemons. I got that backwards. So anyway.
All right. What about you, Morgan? How do you feel about all this?
I think pretty much similar to what Laura said. Networking, maybe even a step beyond that, relationships, and just the ability to even get outside of the industry and have some fun. Just to build that extra connection of, that I can be outside of my writing box and still, want to get to know you and connect with you. And I like to have fun. So I think they're fun. I don't think all of them are necessary, and maybe if there were, different ones to choose from. But I think some of them, I think they are important. I think it's important to have fun and to make those connections.
Okay, Gabby.
I think they can be great marketing. Like I said before, I feel like it's easy to throw a DJ in the room or to give some awards. It's not easy, but it's common to do that. What I don't think is as common is give us an opportunity to actually sit and talk doing something different. And I mean, obviously, I haven't gone to any other big convention, so I'm sure they do this other places. But, I just feel like you need to put some thought into it like you do other things, because I feel like it can get too kitschy, and you put alcohol and music in sometimes, and you're missing the whole opportunity to talk to people. It is fun, and obviously we had fun together, but you're not really going to get to talk to people. I just feel like there needs to be a little more thought put into how do you curate a conversation or give people spots, maybe more than one spot, to be able to do that, because not everybody wants to be doing something loud and crazy, and making sure you're curating spots for a quality conversation, or even fun stuff like, Cards Against Humanity. Give us pots of tea, or some cool drinks, or put out, there's so many things you could do, and you're not going to have the same conversations you have playing cards or doing something like that you would doing karaoke. You know what I'm saying? And I feel like when you're there to make relationships and conversations, it's so fun to dance, and because trust me, I didn't stop dancing till the DJ stopped playing. But when you're talking about relationships and marketing and schmoozing and getting to know people, it's kind of hard. I think it depends on the situation, and I feel like if there was a little more thought put into it, it could be really cool. So I like them. It just depends on what it is. And I think, too, there's people like me who aren't always down to do, I'm down to dance all night long, but I'm not talking to anybody while I'm doing it. So I think, you got to pick and choose and find something that's right for you, and then really take advantage to do that kind of marketing and schmoozing and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Well, and I think one thing we have not really touched on as far as the events are concerned is how does the actual author feel about the event, the one that's in the spotlight. in the limelight, because I feel like that I've been to events, whether it's a breakfast before BEA starts and the publisher set it up and there are 3 or 4 authors, but there are also 200 guests, you know, and you're all sitting trying to talk to these 4 extremely well-known authors, and there's no way 200 people will get to talk to those 4 people in 30 minutes or 45 minutes. And so, but you also have 1 or 2 out of those 4 authors that is a recluse. And so being in a room with 200 people freaks them out, and they like hermit themselves up, like, you know, it's one of those things where I think that the event has to match what the target, what the purpose is. I mean, I think there has to be a purpose for it. That's my point. Yep. And if your author is someone that can't handle a big crowd, then maybe it is, you know, an event where you know that your author doesn't have to talk a lot, that you plan. But then at the same time, I think that they're kind of throwing a random idea out there, like a version of speed dating, but with authors, I think would be really cool, because then an author doesn't have to be afraid of a huge crowd, but they can talk to one person at a time for 2 minutes, or even for 30 seconds, just to make it interesting every now and then.
Yeah.
But I think that that's so important, and sometimes I catch myself laughing at an event where there's an author, and sometimes they love it, and they have so much fun, and they have so much to drink that it's probably not the best event for them to be at. I mean, and I think that a publicist, that's what a publicist is for, to help orchestrate the events and what happens, because they should know their author. But but I also think that an author or a group of authors that plan something outside of an event, they should be aware of what they can handle and what they can't handle.
I think that's a really good point, and that kind of even goes back to a little bit what Gaby was talking about. You are being your own brand, and Morgan talking about like being prepared. I used to coach public speaking, speech and debate, forensics, not the chopping up kind, the competitive speaking kind. And we used to laugh about it because kids would like compete, and at the end of the day, somebody's going to rank high and somebody's going to rank low. And the way that we used to say it is, if a kid got their score back and they placed first, second, or third, they would say, "Oh, I got first, I got second, I got third." But if it was lower than that, it was always, "The judge gave me fourth, the judge gave me fifth, or the judge gave me sixth." And then you would either have competitive, you'd have like them talking, "Oh, this was so great," or they were kind of going, "Yeah," you know. And I used to have a rule that said, you're going to have a party face on at the public event. Even if you came in dead last, you are going to put on the party face. And after we get on the bus, all the windows are up, and we have pulled a mile away from the venue. At that point, if you want to complain, if you want to cry, I will provide the shoulder and the Kleenex. But like, you know, you gotta kind of keep it real, because it's the day of the cell phone and the camera, and people, you know, and I know it's mentally exhausting, but when you're at an event, you have to be on. And not that we're fake or anything, but there is a certain public persona that is perhaps a little more guarded than what I'm saying with my girlfriends, who have the benefit of knowing me for 10 years and know if I say something off the cuff that I'm kidding, versus somebody who just knows me from, you know, an author event, and if I say something that sounds perhaps not the most politically correct, they don't have any kind of context into which to put it. So I feel like that's like a really big deal, as you're saying, like when you're coming up with all these like little peripheral events and things, like that's definitely something to think about.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and it's funny because you say that, but it's not just that you say it in a panel, but it's that they tweet it.
Yeah, well, that's it. It's the day of the cell phone, the video, I mean, you know, and if you make a mistake, all I can say is apologize for it. You know, Own it and apologize for it. That's the first thing you do. Own it. Yep, you're right. I did that. I am so sorry you were offended. I'm only human. Moving on. You know, that's what you got to do. But hopefully it's like sort of like a one-time anomaly, if I could say that word correctly, and not like perpetually putting your foot in your mouth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so last little thing I want to talk about tonight, and it's not really that little, but it's kind of cool. I would love, and we kind of joked about this texting earlier, a couple of us, but I would love for you to, if you had to, or I say had to, if you could, like in your perfect convention, pick 3 things that happened, because I don't want to make you feel like you have to plan the whole thing, because let's be honest, you're thinking of this right now. 3 things that you wish would happen at a convention, that you would adore happening at a convention, that would just like the culmination of those 3 things would make it a utopia, a perfect convention. What would they be? And while you're thinking of this, I'm going to give you a few seconds to think about this. The thing is that there's so many things to take into consideration that we really haven't discussed so much about, like scheduling. You know, whether it's a 2-day convention versus a 4-day convention, whether it's a writing convention or it's a book convention, and also the different tracks that you can have in those conventions, like we were talking about earlier, where there's a track for new writers versus a track for you know, writers that have written and published 3 or 4 books. There's also the idea that that you can have signings simultaneously with these panels. I mean, there's so much that goes into a convention and really deciding what your convention is. And we haven't even really talked about the fact that sometimes I think that conventions are they're oversaturated with too many ideas. Like they try to do too much. Sometimes I think that if they would keep it simple and have a purpose, and this each event or panel or signing met that purpose, then it would probably mesh a whole lot better. But I think that if we also listen to the audience, kind of like Gaby was talking about, feel out who really is out there and who's coming, glean that information, and then put it into your convention. What would people want? Like, what would they want at their convention? Gaby?
My dream convention would have a panel that had some of the best authors in branding. Like, I think one of the best people that does branding is Rainbow Rowell. All of her stuff is perfectly branded, and when she sends something out, it's branded perfectly. But what would be really cool is to have somebody from a big corporation like Apple or Disney or something like that to come with these authors on this panel and say, if it were me, this is how I would brand, and pick an author. Have an author, you know, an indie or something. This is how I would brand this person, to show the difference between, and you would have to have somebody who would cooperate, like myself. If you have this idea, you want to do this, I'm down. Apple, Disney. How would you brand Gaby Robbins? You know, my book, my stuff. What would you do? Because I feel like the community of authors is so tight, and I love it, but in a sense it's so tight, everybody's doing what everybody else is doing, and there's a, you know, the big dogs, the big, you know, companies, you know, the publishing companies are doing their thing the way they do their thing. But wouldn't it be so cool for them to say, if it were us, this is how I would promote you, this is how I would brand you, and this would be the important stuff, so that you get a different mindset about it. I think it'd be a fabulous panel, and I'm totally volunteering to be that person, just so I'm saying. Then I would love to have an event where you did kind of curate conversation, so you could have like tea or teenies and, you know, martinis, and sit and have a room that was just like loungy, cool music, books, and you say, just, this is an, you know, an hour and a half to come and just hang out, and knowing that it's just for conversation, knowing that it's to meet the authors that come, the ones that aren't terrified of conversation, people who want to interact, and it be something that when you invite your authors to, say, we would love, love, love for you to come prepared to meet your fans, and not like a table signing way, but just to talk to your fans and hang out and do something really cool like that, you know, and even ask them, what's your favorite tea, or what's your favorite martini, and have those tables all around, and, you know, have, you know, Kallie Ross's favorite tea, and, you know, that kind of thing. Just totally, you know, promoting likes and dislikes and having conversation, because I think you don't get that very often at events. And then I feel like if you could have a couple panels or a couple of items, whether it be a, you know, an author that is completely chosen by social media polling, or a panel that's completely chosen by social media polling, because then I feel like people are going to go and go, I voted for that, and it's going to make them feel connected to the event and to see that they're listening to them. And if not, have it up there, you know, this is the panel that won, but these are all the panels that we're going to try to do next year of things that were voted for. Because I feel like it is an honor to be able to go to events like this, but the recognition that it's us that are giving to it to make those things happen, it just would kind of feel reciprocal, and you would feel much more of a community. So yeah, that's my things.
Okay, Miss Morgan, 3 of your top things that you want to see at a convention.
Okay, I'm going to jump off of one of Gaby's, the Convo Hangout. I think that is an awesome idea, but I would like to also see one with authors, with other authors, with, you know, to talk about the craft, to talk about writing, to talk about, you know, how do you do this? Why do you do this? Just to start the conversation. But
I steal ideas from y'all all the time.
Yeah, so maybe, you know, not just the, you know, fans and readers, but which would be awesome, but also just to have one for, because yeah, I would love to talk about writing and what makes you write the way that you do and why is it that way, and just to be able to get personal with it. I also think it would be fun to have and maybe this is kind of just similar, but like a specific to bloggers, like a blogger meet and greet. You know, we're authors. We are looking for bloggers. We want to find you. You know, you are the ones that, you know, spread the love and promote us, and to be able to, you know, meet bloggers and help show the love to them, I think that would be kind of cool. I also would think that, you know, just a prancing unicorn just running through different panels and all around.
Oh crap. That's what happens when you stain furniture all day, Morgan.
I know, and I got stain.
You know what? Now a unicorn has to be a part of your branding.
Right? We will make unicorns happen, Morgan. It's a rule.
Oh, that's funny.
And licorice. Licorice should be handed out at every panel in the door.
Like, I think that there are a ton of kitschy things that could be done at conventions for fun. Like, at a panel, if I'm moderating, to ask each of the authors what are your favorite candy, and come with a bowl for each of them to hand out to people in the audience, just for fun, just for connections. I think it would be cool.
Absolutely.
And honestly, Morgan, I love your idea with the bloggers and authors, because I feel like sometimes there are bloggers that they run the gamut of reviewing everything from children's to adult, but then there are some that are very specific about the genres that they read and review. And I would love it if maybe that speed dating option we talked about, which you said that there are a couple of other conventions that have done that. What if you did that with the authors and the bloggers? And
I think that would be cool.
And then you could kind of get to know, if they're not interested, that's fine. You know, like, it's not something they review. But if they are, they could take your card and you could send them a free book. You know, just something like that I think would be really cool. But it's kind of funny. As many conventions as I've been to where they just give you free books, because let me just be honest with you guys, it is like my favorite thing in the world to get.
Right?
Like, just give me a book, please. Please, you give them a face, you know, like, please, I really want that book. And usually they're so nice. They're like, oh, let me go look and see if we have an extra copy. And even if they're like, they've handed out 200, it's like, oh, I found this one in the back. Why don't you take it? And you're like, oh, thank you so much. I love free books. So for me, it's kind of one of those things that I love to go to those conventions where I get books and they're ready to hand them out because they know you're going to read and review them. But with that being said, now that I am writing more than I am reading and reviewing, I'm kind of in this weird, like, vortex world where I am hearing authors and writers talk about their practices, and I am like a sponge. I mean, even if it's somebody that tweets an idea, I'm like, okay, let's try it. Let's see if this works. So for me, I would love a panel with a group of authors, probably more experienced, you know, with a few to a lot of years of experience, to go up and talk about what has worked and what has not worked for them. And I would love to see it that there's someone that's represented from every different genre, because I feel like that sometimes you get all fantasy writers or all paranormal writers on a panel, and when you're talking about writing, yes, if I'm writing paranormal, I want a panel full of paranormal authors that are throwing ideas out there. But at the same time, I really think we could benefit from hearing from other writers that are writing different genres, because I feel like there are a lot of genres that are being mashed together recently. But I would love to hear them talk about what has worked. Like, for instance, that backwards outlining thing that I picked up off of Twitter. I picked it up off of Twitter. Somebody just tweeted it. And it was at BEA, and they were at a panel when I was not, so I was trying to keep up with the panel while I was waiting in line for a free book. And this guy says, you know, so-and-so outlines backwards. That's where that idea came from. And let me just tell you, it's genius. Like, it's something I will probably do with every series that I ever write, every book that I ever write, because it was something that I could test it against what I'd already outlined, and it led me to outlining 27 chapters, like, ahead. And I'm not one of those that can outline that far in advance. I have to kind of write and then outline a few chapters, write and then outline a few chapters. So I just love it. I just love getting ideas from other authors. And even, like, Gaby the other day was showing me her casting for her novel, and I'm like, ooh, I need to do that for this new novel I'm writing. I need to cast characters. So I don't know if that was 3, but that's what I would want at the perfect book convention, and probably chocolate. Like, you know, 3 bars, something would make me happy. 3 Musketeers, and my Diet Dr. Pepper. I'd be a happy camper. Well, okay, so we've kind of talked about what our favorite, or what, you know, what our pet peeves are, what we would expect from a great convention, what we've maybe been through, and then also what would make our perfect convention. And I really appreciate all of y'all being on tonight. I know it's been one of those topics where you guys probably did hold your tongue a little on some of the things you've experienced at different conferences, because let's be honest, sometimes the food is bad, or sometimes, you know, there's no Wi-Fi where you want to be, because at BEA that is the case every single year.
Or sometimes you should not meet your book hero.
Yes.
You know, sometimes it would have been better for me not to have met the author. Not happened at a recent convention, but yeah, a couple of years ago, it was like, wow, I'm probably never going to buy one of your books again. Sometimes it's better when you don't meet your heroes.
And I really think that the publisher should know that ahead of time. Right? But next week, just so everybody knows that's watching, we have SM Boyce on, and she's going to be talking about newsletters and how she works on newsletters and sends those out. And she's also going to talk about a writing class that she's doing, and I'm really excited about that, because I kind of want to talk about how people feel about writing classes and taking them, whether it's online or in person or whatnot. So I'm really excited about that. I hope people will tune back in. And ladies, thank you so much. I'm going to announce you one more time just so everybody can see your beautiful faces. I've got Morgan Wylie. Woo! And I've got Laura Byrne-Cristiano.
Hello.
And I have got Gaby Robbins. Yee. These are my friends, people. Aren't they good looking? They are some good looking friends. Thank you, ladies, and I will hopefully talk to you very soon. # Love Write Create. Woo! Bye, you guys.
Bye.